Forbidden Autopsies of Haunted Nuns. 6 sinister cases revealed by legal experts in morgues. Emily Parker's heart raced as she grabbed the rusted doorknob of the old convent. A place where once kind souls lived, but now held something else inside. The town of Haverhill whispered secrets long buried. Autopsy reports she had stumbled upon at the hospital sent chills down her spine. 6 nuns. All dead, each with a story of unnatural causes, linked to this very place. Shadows danced ominously in the moonlight. The bitter chill in the air felt alive, as if urging her to step inside. What happened here? An instinct screamed at her to turn back, but the clicking of heels faded down dark corridors compelled her forward. "Incredible!" she muttered, shaking hands gripping the pages she'd torn from the morgue files. The words jumped off the page. Signs of curses, ritualistic symbols etched into skin, whispers of the lost children that had been taken. The very thought felt like a vice around her throat. Each fact twisted tighter around her psyche, as if the space around her was warping under the weight of dark histories. She had to know, had to uncover what these nuns had been guarding, and why they had been silenced. Danny, her 11-year-old son, plagued by asthma, needed her more than ever. His laughter, a flutter in the heavy silence of her life, echoed like a warning as air turned to ice. Too frightened to think what might be lurking beyond the mundane, she had plans that did not involve chasing ghosts. Yet, there she was pushing through old memories of safety. Her suburban sanctuary was becoming a gilded cage as she immersed herself in the reports. Night after night between shifts at the hospital, peculiar things began to unfold. Hooded figures moved among the shadows, drifting past her window just as her heart began to race with a familiar sense of dread. Emily would wake in cold sweats, convinced they were out there, waiting. Was this paranoia? Or was something sinister hunting in the dark? Her gut nodded. She reached out to her neighbor, John. Once a lawyer, now like a haunted relic himself, gripped by addiction and outcast by the community. But, as her trembling fingers tapped at his door, she felt a spark of hope. He had seen things. His faded eyes would carry stories written in pain, but only if he was able to relay them. She needed strength, something that could lead her back to safety. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As they delved into the secrets of Haverhill, Emily's skin prickled. They uncovered a predator hidden in plain sight, an authority figure the town trusted. As their hunt reached a fever pitch, every uncovered secret became more damning, leading them inexorably back to that convent. The air grew heavy as they approached the entrance. Whispers seemed to swirl around them, pulling them forward, as if the building itself was alive. Then came the scream, a piercing echo slicing through the darkness. Emily's heart dropped. It was Danny. A horrifying realization gripped her. She could feel the walls closing in around her. The door slammed shut, sealing her inside. Darkness enveloped her as she cried out for her son. Time stood still, terror surged. The question lingered, could she confront the evil that claimed the nuns? Or had it already claimed her son? Emily stumbled back, her voice lost amidst the oppressive silence. She pressed her palm against the cold, splintered wood of the door, heart pounding, desperate to break free. The scream rang through her ears like an echo of shattered glass. "Danny?" she yelled, her voice trembling with dread. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she felt the darkness pulse around her, a living entity hungry for despair. Shadows flickered in the corners, growing taller, stretching toward her with sinister intent. She forced herself to inhale deeply, choking on the stale, musty air. With one last desperate push, she leaned against the door and twisted the knob. It wouldn't budge. "Danny!" The echoes faded, replaced by a chilling stillness that wrapped around her. She glanced around, her senses heightened. The room was cluttered with remnants of a forgotten past, old statues draped in cobwebs, cracked tiles underfoot that crunched softly like bones. Everything felt wrong, tainted, fingers shaking. She rummaged through her pockets, pulling out her phone. The screen blinked with a feeble light as she pressed the button, the glow illuminating a small area around her. She had a flash of hope, a tiny lifeline, but there was no reception. Nothing but a lifeless black void where connection should be. Emily, a whisper slithered from the shadows, barely audible, but distinctly familiar. She twisted around, searching for the source. "Help me." Cold fear gripped her stomach. It was Danny's voice. Her legs took control before her mind could process. She stumbled toward the dark hallway, each step echoing like a heartbeat. "Danny?" she called, voice quaking with urgency. "I'm coming." The whispers intensified, crashing against her like waves, pressing her deeper into the depths of the convent where light seemed to vanish. Her footsteps guided her away from the door, pulling her into darkness that thickened around her, wrapping her in a suffocating blanket. Memories of Danny's laughter flickered in her mind like candles about to be snuffed out. "Help!" The whisper beckoned again, now closer, threaded with agony. She followed, moving through a narrow corridor where the walls felt alive, breathing like a beast driven by hunger. Each doorway she passed glowed with shadows that seemed to dance just out of sight, mere flickers of movement. A bead of sweat trickled down her back, and she felt the weight of unseen eyes upon her. "Danny!" She cried out again, desperation clawing at her throat. The answer was a low, guttural moan, one that vibrated through the very ground beneath her feet. The air thickened, time seemed to twist, and she swore the shadows coiled tighter, tightening their grip around her. Then, she noticed a flicker of light splitting the darkness ahead. She quickened her pace, pushing through with renewed fervor. But when she reached the light, her heart sank. It was a room, a chapel perhaps, cloaked in shadows, empty save for an altar draped in tattered cloth. Stained glass windows allowed the moonlight to pierce through, casting distorted patterns onto the floor. On the altar lay a familiar figure, too still for comfort, and the face was framed by nun's habits. Her breath stalled as she stumbled backward. When she turned to flee, the shadows seized her, slamming the door behind her with a deafening thud. The chapel seemed to shrink, the air thickening, becoming darker with every passing second. Emily, the voice materialized again, more desperate this time, wrapping around her like chains. "Don't leave me, this wasn't just a search. It was a trap." Panic surged anew. If she was going to find Danny, she had to confront the inner workings of this nightmare. She had to face whatever malevolent force governed this place. Could she unleash what had bound the nuns to silence? And how far was she willing to go to save her son? Emily took a deep breath and clutched her phone tighter, striding toward the altar, her heart pounding against the confines of her chest. What awaited her in the shadows? Ready to be unleashed. The answers lurked just beyond, teasing her as she stepped closer. But what she didn't know was that some things are better left buried. The air around Emily turned frigid, a piercing chill that burrowed into her bones. Shadows skittered across the walls as she approached the altar, every instinct screaming at her to turn back. The whimpering plea, thick with fear and need, reverberated in her ears, compelling her forward even as reason shouted against it. She reached the altar, her fingers brushing the edge of the tattered cloth. The fabric felt like ice beneath her touch, as if it had absorbed every cold sorrow held within this forsaken space. She glanced at the figure beneath, desperation roiling in her stomach. Was it truly Danny? "Help me," the voice swelled, transforming into a chorus, twisting, wailing, blending into a cacophony of anguish. It felt like chains snapping, scraping against her sanity. Emily's heart raced. She needed to act before the shadows overwhelmed her. With shaking hands, she pulled back the cloth, revealing not just Danny, but a collection of shapes nuns strewn carelessly. Their eyes shut in eternal silence, faces twisted in expressions of unspeakable dread. They looked as if they had been pulled from a nightmare, bodies bearing marks of some grim ritual. "Danny," she choked out, her voice raw and trembling. He was nowhere among them. But the shadows shifted, a dark wave washing over her, drowning out the pale light from the stained glass. The figure of one nun, eyes wide and mouth frozen in a soundless scream, seemed to reach for her across the chasm of death. Suddenly, the shadows thickened, swirling like smoke, weaving around her feet, and she stumbled back, horrified. Emily shot a glance around the room. The chapel had become a prison. Doors she once escaped from now stood closed, forming walls that pressed in on her. "Why are you here?" A voice rasped, echoing from the darkness, a low, ethereal whisper that chilled her more than the biting air. Felt alive, crawling beneath her skin. "I'm looking for my son," she cried, desperation pooling in her chest, endless tears spilling down. "Please, have you seen him? I can't leave him here." A shadow coalesced, forming into a tall silhouette of a nun, her features obscured. "He is not here." Yet, the figure intoned, and Emily felt an icy breath on her neck, sending shivers coursing through her body. "He awaits. In the depths." "What do you mean?" she whispered, fear constricting her throat. "Join us," the silhouette crooned, the shadows enveloping her in a shroud of icy fear. 1,000 voices blended in harmony, beckoning, pleading. Emily stumbled, the weight of despair pressing down. "Feed the darkness, and he shall be freed." Panic clawed at her throat, and everything the room, the shadows, that dreadful whisper felt like a sickening vortex pulling her deeper into an abyss. She had to resist, but wouldn't that mean Danny would be lost forever? Could she risk it? As time twisted and coiled around her, each heartbeat a deafening drum, Emily felt herself sinking. The altar pulsed with energy, a macabre invitation. How many souls had been claimed here? Let the past be reborn. The nun's voice pierced through as Emily noticed a faint glimmer in a distant corner of the chapel, a doorway she hadn't seen before. It flickered like a dying star, promising salvation or doom. With trembling resolve, she turned toward it, heart pounding each step, a fragile choice between hope and despair. But the shadows erupted around her again, and she felt their grip tighten, pulling her back toward the altar's suffocating embrace. In that moment, Emily realized something. It wasn't just about saving Danny anymore. It was about survival. Was she truly strong enough to navigate this abyss? Or would the shadows swallow her whole, just as they had done countless others? Before she could convince herself either way, a deafening crash echoed through the chapel. The walls trembled as a flicker of light blazed, illuminating the terror around her. What was it? A chance for escape? Or the harbinger of something far more sinister waiting to be unleashed? The shadows surged, hungry and inescapable. The light pulsed again, stronger this time, flooding the room with an ethereal glow. Emily squinted, trying to make sense of it, her heart hammering against her ribs. She could barely breathe, torn between the glowing door and the pull of the shadows wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. "Help me!" the voices cried, and Emily staggered, the weight of their sorrow thick as fog in her mind. This place was more than a chapel. It was a tomb, filled with souls who had not found peace. But Danny, she couldn't let that thought drown her. She squeezed her eyes shut, remembering his laughter, the way he would run ahead, full of life. "I'm coming, Danny," she shouted against the chorus of despair, the words spilling from her. The shadows shuddered, retreating just a fraction, as if disturbed by her defiance. Was it possible? Did her urgency lean against the darkness? But the moment of doubt vanished as the nun's figure surged forward, her presence freezing the air. "Foolish child," she spat, an echo of unimaginable anger ringing through her voice. "You cannot escape the truth. This is your destiny." With another crash, the distant door creaked. Revealing more than light, it showed a glimpse of a dark corridor lined with reflections of memories past. Ghostly silhouettes flitted to and fro, unaware of her presence, encased in their eternal cycle. She could see shadows of children, laughter twisting into screams. Was that Danny among them? Instinct kicked in. She had to know. Taking a deep breath, Emily stumbled toward the door, the shadows reluctant to release her. They lashed out, tendrils of darkness snaking toward her, as if angry at her betrayal. She felt their cold embrace tightening, pulling her back with a ferocity that made her heart race with terror. In that moment, all she could see was Danny's face, those big blue eyes innocent and wide, pleading with her to rescue him. Not him. Let him go, she screamed, fighting against the pull of the shadows. But her voice was small, drowning in the spiraling darkness. And then, she felt it, a surge of energy coursed through her veins, igniting her spirit. Was it the memory of Danny, or the strength rising up from within? Either way, she could not falter. Wrapping her hands around the altar, she yanked herself back toward the glowing door, desperate for freedom, desperate for life. Feed us. 1,000 voices echoed around her, and the nun's enraged face twisted with longing. You belong to us now. Do not disregard the offering. With one last, defiant roar, Emily lurched forward, breaking through the shadows, straining against the dark force. She broke free. The light engulfed her, blinding and warm, obliterating the chilling grasp of fear. But something else stirred behind her, a darkening mass swirling violently. The presence of the nuns transformed into a furious cyclone, a tempest of anguish and rage. As Emily crossed the threshold into the corridor, the shriek fractured the air, a million cries of loss and wrath merging into one potent sound. You cannot go. The door slammed shut behind her, sealing the wrath of the chapel from her, but not without leaving a searing pain clawing at her heart. She stood, panting, the laughter of the other side nearly drowned out by the echoing silence of the corridor. Emily wiped the sweat from her brow, her mind racing, her resolve shaken but unbroken. How long could she run before they caught up to her? Was Danny left behind, a sacrifice to the darkness? Glimmers of light flickered ahead, each footstep bringing her closer, yet darker thoughts surrounded her like mist. As she ventured deeper into the corridor, she could have sworn she heard Danny's voice guiding her, promising her safety. But was he simply another mirage concocted by the depths of despair? She pressed on, straining to hear over the dull roar of silence, wondering if she truly escaped the shadows or if they were coming for her in ways yet unseen. What secrets lay ahead? And could she survive the truth lurking just beyond the flickering veil of light? The corridor loomed before Emily, a long stretch of uncertainty lined with faded portraits and peeling wallpaper. Shadows flickered at the periphery of her vision, darting like silver fish in murky water. She tightened her grip on the altar's edge, pressing her palms against the cool stone, grounding herself against the echoes of despair that felt almost alive, crawling along her skin. Danny, she called, her voice hoarse, barely reverberating in the heavy air. But the stillness that answered her was deafening. Another flicker of light ahead piqued her senses, and she moved cautiously forward, the rhythmic pulse of her heartbeat hammering in her ears. Was it a way out? Maybe another chance to find him? With each step, the corridor seemed to warp, the dimness stretching into shadows that twisted around her ankles like hungry serpents. Her instincts recoiled as whispers slithered in and out of her consciousness, chilling her to the bone. Help us! Help us! They cried, a sinister choir mingling with her doubts. Then she saw at a door at the end of the hallway, ajar, light spilling out like molten gold. Hope sparked, and she surged forward, each stride driven by a desire to escape, to find the boy she loved. But there was no joy in her progress. A shiver danced up her spine as cold fingers traced the nape of her neck. Something was watching. Emily, a soft voice drifted from the shadows. It was as familiar as sunlight on her face. Emily, come. It was Danny, layered with an urgency she couldn't ignore. Driven by instinct, she rushed toward the voice. The door loomed closer, and she reached it, pushing it open with trembling hands. The blinding light poured over her, and she stepped in, heart racing, only to be met with something altogether different. The room was no sanctuary, it was a scene from nightmares. Tables lined with sheet-covered bodies, and each one bore the cold visage of the nuns. Emily's breath caught in her throat as she recognized them. Their faces contorted in expressions of sorrow and rage, all reminiscent of the woman who had chased her. Horror dripped into her veins. No, she whispered, but she couldn't look away. Each body told a story, the remnants of their restless souls trapped within, yearning for release. An altar at the far end shimmered eerily, surrounded by candles that flickered like dying stars. Emily. Danny's voice sounded again, desperate now, pulling at her heartstrings. She turned quickly, scanning the room, searching for him. But the moment was swallowed by a demonic cacophony, the nuns' sorrowful wails echoing, demanding her attention. They live on the edge of despair. A voice rumbled from the shadows, deep and echoing. They are bound to the sins they've committed. Just as you will be if you linger here. Fear rushed over Emily like freezing water. The walls seemed to close in, the outstretched hands of the nuns reaching towards her, shadows rippling with malice, threatening to drag her into their eternal night. She took a step back, panic settling in, her throat dry. "Danny, where are you?" she yelled, the desperation clawing at her insides. The room shifted around her, tables creaking, shadows elongating until they blended into grotesque figures. "Join us, Emily," they hissed, voices blending into a singular dark chant. "Join us and be free of your burden." The words wrapped around her like chains, pulling her toward the altar, where the candle's flames danced crazily, beckoning her closer. But was Danny really there? Or was this a trap? She hesitated, a flood of conflicting emotions crashing against her. In this room filled with the remnants of the lost, how could she differentiate between the truth and the lure of darkness? With one last desperate glance at the altar, she bolted back toward the open door, the shadows trailing behind her, howling in fury. They wouldn't let her escape that easily, and deep down, she knew she had to make a choice. Would she risk her soul to uncover the truth, or flee and abandon everything she held dear? The corridor loomed ever darker behind her, and she could feel the darkness breathing down her neck, ready to reclaim what it believed was owed. "Emily," the voice cried again, more insistent now. But the flickering light said nothing of safety. It only illuminated the harrowing truth of what lay ahead. The choice seemed near, but was it even hers to make? Or was the darkness already twisting her fate? With dread settling in her chest, she took a step forward, knowing that every decision could lead to salvation or damnation. What waited in the next room was uncertain, a doorway into freedom or into her worst nightmares. Desperate, Emily lunged toward the door and stumbled into the corridor again, heart pounding like a drum in a silent room. The darkness slithered past her, thick and heavy, whispering malevolent secrets that wrapped around her mind. The flickering light behind her faded, replaced by the thick veil of night. Suffocating and taunting panic surged, urging her feet forward, but each step felt heavier than the last, like the floor beneath was pulling her back, unwilling to let go. The voices turned into a booming chant, echoing not just in her ears, but in her skull. "Emily, join us! Join us!" The words twisted in vicious circles, intoxicatingly sweet yet laced with a sharp horror. There had to be another way to find Danny. She forced herself to focus and retraced her steps toward where she had entered the room, the door to the altar. If she could just reach it again, she could help us, Emily, hissed the voices once more, this time sounding closer. Shivers coursed through her body. In the dim light, she thought she saw shifting shadows against the walls, figures that flickered from one shape to another. They were coming for her. "Danny!" She stumbled forward, her voice cracking with raw desperation. "Danny!" She didn't know if he was nearby or still trapped among the shadows deeper in the haunt. The thought of his voice, now tinged with fear, chilled her bones. Had she made a mistake? Should she have stayed with the bodies for answers? Dread pooled in her stomach. If she couldn't find him soon? A crash echoed behind her, and Emily whipped around just in time to see something darting between the shadows, the silhouette of a child. "Danny!" she screamed, racing toward the darkened hallway. The vision flickered, darting away just as she reached out, her fingers brushing the air where he had been. "Emily!" His voice split the air, filled with fear and urgency. "This way." The desperation in his tone fortified her resolve. She plunged deeper into the shadows, her feet moving on instinct. Hushed whispers wrapped around her forms, pleading for her attention, tugging at her sleeve like spectral children wanting to be saved. The air echoed with cries, impending terror filling every corner. Suddenly, she skidded to a halt. A doorway loomed before her, older and more decayed than the rest. The air pulsated with something dark, a low hum that resonated against her ribs. This couldn't be where Danny was waiting. Something about it felt wrong, but she was already too far gone to retreat. "Come to me, Emily." The voice beckoned, more powerful and resonant than the nun's cries. The air crackled like static electricity. She pushed through the door, the hinges shrieking in agony. The room was smaller, confined. A single flickering bulb dangled from the ceiling, casting uncanny shadows on the walls. The faces of the nuns seemed to spring back to life in the gloom. Their lifeless eyes watched her intently, mouths twisted in silent screams. In the center stood a table, and on it lay something wrapped in an old, tattered sheet. Emily's heart raced as she moved closer, each step heavy with dread. "Emily!" Danny's voice sounded again, but it echoed distorted, mixing with the dank air, taunting her with uncertainty. A sense of urgency gripped her. She needed to uncover the truth hidden beneath the sheet. What was lying there? A shriek erupted from within the room, louder than anything before. The shadows surged, coiling around her limbs as a figure lunged at her from the darkness. She stumbled back, the tension snapping like a taut string. The voice bore down on her, heartless and cold. "You seek him, but he belongs to us now." Emily gasped, visions of the altar flooding back. The nuns weren't just remnants. They were intertwined with her fate, echoing the very torment of those trapped within their dark legacy. "Danny!" she cried again, fighting against the growing terror gripping her heart like icy fingers. The shadows swarmed, chanting rhythms of dread. She needed to break free, to realize the truth before it consumed her. But as the figure advanced, Emily saw not a creature of evil, but maybe a twisted reflection of herself, a choice she had to confront in this haunted sanctuary. The chilling realization settled in. The shadows reflected not only danger but the very fear that lived inside her. With a breath caught in her throat, she prepared to face what was coming and what it would mean for everything she held dear. The floor quaked beneath her, and as the shadows closed in, she realized she was on the brink of a revelation. What power did the darkness truly hold? And would she have the strength to confront it before it brought her crushing despair? "Danny!" she cried one last time, adrenaline surging as the light began to flicker wildly above. Was she truly ready to learn what it meant to embrace the dark? The figure lunged forward, an amalgamation of darkness and dread, and it was then that Emily recognized the truth. This wasn't a stranger, it was part of her. A ghastly mirror reflecting the rage and sorrow she buried deep inside. Shadows danced around her, whispering secrets in chaotic unison. Yet they felt strangely familiar. Her breath hitched, heart thrumming against her ribs. "What do you want?" she shouted, voice choked with a mixture of fear and defiance. The figure halted, a pause heavy with anticipation. "We all want to be heard," it rasped, its voice echoing with the weight of countless sorrows. "Help us if you can." Emily's resolve faltered for a moment. Help them? She didn't even know who or what they were. But as she glanced around, the lifeless eyes of the nuns bore down on her, demanding her attention. They were trapped, anchored in this veiled world of despair. "Emily, please!" The shadows chanted again, morphing into a collective sigh. "We are your past." That past slashed like a knife through her mind. Memories of laughter, faded photographs, moments long buried under guilt and shame clawed their way to the surface. She had thought she left them behind, but they were here with her now, haunting the very air she breathed. "Get away from me!" she screamed, feeling raw vulnerability flood her body. But they only closed in tighter, the walls vibrating with their anguish. "You were supposed to protect us." A heavy silence followed, and the flickering light dimmed. Emily felt the shadows retreat slightly, thinned by her vulnerable anger. For the first time, she saw the table in the center of the room clearly. The tattered sheet concealing whatever lay beneath it quivered now, as if alive, waiting for her touch. "Make your choice," the figure rasped, its eyes glimmering with an unsettling familiarity. "Unveil the truth or forsake your soul." With shaking hands, Emily stepped toward the table, every nerve ending singing with trepidation. She hesitated, the weight of choice pressing down on her. Dina, her childhood friend, the accident in the car, all the guilt flooded in. A tide she thought she had learned to swim against. But the voice of Danny pierced through the chaos. "Emily, don't give in. I'm here." That sweet, innocent tone broke through her despair, anchoring her. She reached out to the sheet, her heart thundering in her chest. Before she could pull it back, the world shifted. The whispers intensified, swirling like a violent storm around her. "Truth is not what it seems," the figures murmured, wrestling for supremacy in the shadows. "To know is to suffer." She yanked the sheet away, breath catching in her throat. But as it fell, the night closed in tighter. What lay before her was more than a body. It was a confession of the lost her connection to them rendered permanently scarred. A rush of cold air swept through the room, spiraling her thoughts into disarray. Shapes loomed and flickered around her, faces of the forgotten mingling with memories she dared not recall. Her own life spun outward, a thread weaving through their anguish. "No!" Emily screamed, but it was too late. The shadows erupted into a tempest, taking hold of her very essence. Helpless screams echoed, mixing with laughter, a chorus of the tortured trapped within her own psyche. "Let go," the voice urged, "but know the cost." Suddenly, the room blurred, walls bending like vicious waves. She strained to hold her ground, focusing on Danny's voice tethering her to reality. Then came a sharp crack, and everything plunged into darkness. Emily found herself standing in the corridor again, but this time the air felt different. It was electric, alive with deep, pulsing energy. The voices were gone, replaced by an unsettling silence that echoed in the vast emptiness. She pressed a hand to the wall, feeling the grime and age beneath her palm. "Danny?" she whispered, the weight of dread shifting into an icy knot in her stomach. As she moved cautiously forward, she caught a glimpse of light at the end of the corridor, a mere flicker against the oppressive night. Yet as she approached, a chilling realization settled in. What awaited her could either be salvation or the beginning of her own undoing. "Too late to turn back now," she muttered, her heart pounding again as the shadows began to whisper sweet nothings of despair. She couldn't shake the thought that she now stood on the edge of something monumental, a choice that would determine not just her fate, but the fate of all those who were lost in the darkness. What awaited her in the light? Would she find Danny, or had the shadows already claimed him forever? With renewed determination, she took a step toward the flickering glow, ready to confront whatever horror lay just beyond the luminous veil. The light flickered, beckoning Emily forward with a pulse that matched her racing heart. Each step felt heavier, as if the shadows were dragging her back, whispering sickly sweet doubts. "Abandon the light," they hissed. "Embrace the darkness." But she couldn't. Danny was out there, waiting and fighting just like her. She pressed on, the bright glow intensifying as she neared the end of the corridor. Images flashed in her mind. Moments of joy, laughter, but also pain mingling with the echoes of her childhood. It felt like she was walking toward a portal, one that would lead her to either redemption or ruin. As she stepped into the open space, the light enveloped her. But it was not the warm embrace she had imagined. Instead, it bore the weight of entrapment, a spotlight illuminating the harsh reality of what lay ahead. A vast chamber sprawled before her, filled with objects draped in white sheets, each one shrouded in mystery. Glistening tools glinted from the shadows, sharp and menacing, waiting for a purpose. Emily, the voice resonated around her, familiar yet distorted. The echoes of the past twisted, melding with the present. "You've come to understand, Haven Tiu? The truth you seek is not for the faint-hearted." Her breath hitched. What do you mean?" Out of the shadows, the figure emerged once again, more solid, its tortured form revealing the likeness of one of the nuns. The ghostly visage bore hollow eyes, carnage of despair written across its face. You can save them, but it demands a sacrifice. Will you carry that burden? A sickening wave of dread washed over her. What kind of sacrifice? What was lost can be restored, but only if you replace it with your own. Emily's hands trembled, betraying her. She felt the weight of countless souls intertwined, their desperate cries reaching a fever pitch within her mind. Danny's voice fought against the tide of agony. Fight it, Em. But the whispers clutched at her heart. They need you. You need them. In the center of the room, on a pedestal, lay the uncovered remnants of the truth, a shimmering crystal, pulsing like a heartbeat. It looked innocent but felt malignant, as if it contained both her deepest fears and hopes. Stepping closer, she could see figures trapped within lost souls reaching out, pleading for liberation. But with every heartfelt plea, a darkness swirled around the crystal, twisting into horrific shapes that clawed at her sanity. She could feel her resolve cracking beneath the pressure. If I take it, what happens? She asked, voice wavering with uncertainty. The figure's face twisted into a sorrowful smile, a psychosis of calm. You will be bound to them. Yours will be the pain that feeds their release. Her pulse thundered in her ears. The choice loomed, a chasm of uncertainty and fear. Could she really condemn herself to save others? A cold wind swept through the chamber, carrying echoes of laughter and pain, a cruel reminder of what was at stake. Danny, she whispered, seeking the last thread of resolve. Then, she felt an unseen force tugging at her heart, prompting her to make a desperate choice. She lunged toward the crystal, her entire being screaming in protest, shadows converging around her, threatening to pull her under again. And that moment, clarity sparked. She had to abandon her fears, put her past together, but at what cost? As she grasped the crystal in her palm, a surge of energy erupted, binding her to the room. Faces twisted in agony erupted from the shadows, a cacophony of both hope and desperation echoing in her skull. Light and shadow fought within her, each demanding supremacy. Everything went silent. The darkness shimmered, coiling around her limbs, as she stood there, caught between two worlds, waiting for the judgment of her choice. Then came that shattering laugh, echoing from the shadows. Welcome home, Emily. Let us see what you truly are. What awaited her now? Would she save the lost, or had she unleashed something even darker? As her vision dimmed, she felt the first wisps of despair creeping in. Darkness whispered again, you can't run from your own blood. The truth will always find you. The crystal pulsed in her hand, its resonance echoing through her bones, sending ripples of pain and pleasure. She gasped, feeling the weight of countless souls surge within her. The air thickened, coiling around her throat like a vine, squeezing out her breath. Emily, don't! Danny's voice cried out, desperate and electric. It ignited some fragmented part of her resolve, not enough to let go, but enough to fight against the growing shadows that clawed at her. The apparition of the nun hovered closer, its expression twisting into a painful grimace. You've chosen. Now embrace the chaos you've invited. In that moment the chamber erupted. Shadows writhed and twisted, morphing into grotesque forms that lunged toward her. Emily staggered back, heart racing, as memories of the past flooded her mind. Buried trauma surfaced violently, reminding her of the nights she spent enveloped by darkness in the orphanage. Her childhood steeped in fear. The crystal glowed brighter in response, a brutal reminder of her reckoning. Release them, the nun wailed, her voice shredding through the chaos. Only through suffering can they find peace. With a primal scream, Emily hurled herself toward the wall of shadows. She struggled against the agony creeping in, desperately seeking the reason she had initiated this hell. Faces twisted in pain reached for her, their mouths opening in silent screams. They wanted her to help them, to save them at any cost. But who would save her? Danny! She yelled, grasping the crystal tighter. A surge of energy shot through her, and she felt her spirit surge, tearing against the chains of despair. The lost souls howled as the shadows around her began to swirl violently, ripping free from their invisible bonds, merging into a maelstrom of darkness. Fight it! Danny shouted from the depths of her mind, his presence like a beacon in a storm. Her heart drummed erratically, caught between the chaos and the faint light of hope he represented. Then, without warning, the shadows morphed. A figure emerged, a grotesque caricature of Danny, eyes hollow and soulless, its mouth twisted into a mockery of his wonderful smile. "You'll never save us," it hissed. "You'll only feed our pain, Emily. Stop!" Her voice broke as the shadows flared hot and cold around her, leaving her teetering on the edge of madness. She realized the truth. Danny was right there, but that thing mocked her, reflecting her own vulnerabilities. Only through suffering. The nun's whisper echoed, taunting, echoing the core of her nightmare. "No!" she screamed, willing every ounce of defiance into her voice. The crystal shone violently, illuminating the room in ominous light, pushing back the shadows. It felt like a battle for her soul was raging. The air heavy with sorrow and longing. As it reached a fever pitch, silence fell. The shadows halted, frozen in time, their forms shifting with a spectral hum. All eyes turned toward her, waiting, and she stood there, the bearer of unbearable burdens, heart racing, caught in a liminal space between salvation and damnation. Whispers filled the chamber, a cacophony of hopes and fears merging into one plea. "What will you choose, Emily?" The world held its breath. Would she embrace the pain for the lost or fight for her freedom? But before she could decide, the ground below her began to tremble, and cracks snaked outwards like lightning, revealing a darkness deeper than she had ever known. "Run, Emily!" A distant voice screamed, but the shadows glared, and she knew one unbearable truth. There was no escape. What awaited her now? Would she confront the darkness, or would it consume her whole? She braced herself as the ground shattered beneath her feet, plummeting into an abyss filled with lost souls. There was no turning back now. Emily's heart thundered in her chest as the darkness consumed her, spiraling into an abyss where hope and despair seemed to wrestle for control. Her thoughts twisted in a frenzy, grasping at the fading light in her mind, the echoes of Danny's voice urging her to fight against the consuming shadows. "Hold on." Danny's voice reverberated in the void, a lifeline wrapped in desperation. "Mom, don't give up." His words ignited a spark in Emily's heart, pushing her to claw her way back to that flickering hope. The abyss was a chaotic whirlwind of anguished faces, souls tethered to their pain, their whispers clawing at her sanity. Her fingers tightened around the crystal, the pulse of its energy throbbing against her skin like a heartbeat. Every soul within it felt alive, their agony echoing in her bones, urging her to relinquish her fear and embrace the truth of their suffering. With every ounce of resolve, Emily reached deeper within herself. She thought of Danny, his bright smile, the joy he brought into her life, and within that image, she felt a fierce determination to protect him. "I will save you," she whispered fiercely, her voice cutting through the tempest of despair. In that instant of clarity, the walls of the abyss shimmered, revealing glimpses of the nuns' lives, their silent screams resounding through her memories as if imploring her to listen. The darkness quaked, swirling around her, and as she stood tall against the shadows, Emily realized that this was her moment to break the cycle, the pact that bound them to this fate. "Let them go," she bellowed, her voice piercing the cacophony. The air pulsed as she focused her energy onto the crystal, channeling all her emotions into a surge of light. "You are not trapped. I can set you free." A radiant beam erupted from the gem, cutting through the shadows like a beacon. The howls intensified, the figures in the abyss growing chaotic as the light engulfed them. For the first time, Emily saw beyond their anguish, understanding their fear, their desire for release. "I understand your pain," she cried, searching their hollow eyes, their expressions filled with longing. "You don't have to cling to this darkness anymore. It's time to heal." The ground beneath her erupted, the abyss writhing with life. The souls of the nuns, once tormented, began to rise, twining around her luminous light. With every flicker, their trapped cries transformed into quiet sighs of relief, a chorus of suffering swept away as hope replaced despair. Suddenly, a void opened, shadows swirling as if clawing to reclaim what was once theirs. But Emily stood firm, channeling the energy from the crystal, directing it to the very core of the abyss. "You are free," she demanded, her voice unyielding. "You will not hold my son or any of us ever again." The tendrils of darkness began to retract, fading back into the chasm whence they came, their hold breaking. In that crucial moment, Emily sensed the presence of Danny close by. She felt his warmth like a flicker of sun through the clouds. "Mom!" he called, the sound cutting through the chaos, bringing a calmness to the storm. With renewed strength, she concentrated on that one sound. She envisioned Danny, imagining him breaking through the layers of darkness, his laughter, his spirit, his pure innocence. "Come to me," she shouted, allowing the crystal-esque light to fill the corridor, illuminating the path toward her son. The shadows trembled and snapped like brittle twigs, conceding to her will. And as the last echoes of darkness faded, a blinding light exploded around her, blurring her vision. Then silence. Absolute, peaceful silence. As the light dimmed, Emily found herself standing at the chapel's altar. The oppressive weight of despair lifted, replaced by a gentle warmth. She blinked in disbelief. There, on the steps, sat Danny, wide-eyed with wonder, untouched by the darkness. "Mom!" he cheered, sprinting toward her. Emily fell to her knees, wrapping her arms around him, sobs of relief spilling from her heart. "I thought I lost you." "Never," he whispered, hugging her tight, warmth radiating. Between them, the chapel now felt alive, freed from its haunting burden. Emily stood, and together, they turned, leaving the remnants of the past behind. The shadows and whispers had receded, leaving only echoes of their memory, slowly fading into nothingness as they exited into the silver glow of the moonlight. A sense of profound peace enveloped them. The burdens were laid to rest, the need for sacrifice replaced with understanding. The lost could finally find their rest, and in freeing them, Emily had discovered the depths of her own strength. Together, she and Danny walked away, hand in hand, the weight of nightmares dissolving into the night. And as dawn painted the horizon in hues of hope, Emily whispered, "We'll carry their stories. We won't forget." The darkness had tried to claim both their lives, but they had emerged victorious, stronger than ever, ready to embrace a future unburdened by the past. Now you've made it to the end of this wild journey. Don't forget that this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now, so you don't miss any of the next exclusive stories we have lined up for you. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and let everyone know how much you love this conclusion. I want to hear from you. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Was Emily truly free? And finally, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.